Republicans are fighting back against jabs from the White House following the House Oversight Committee's vote to send contempt charges against Attorney General Eric Holder to the full House, and that vote could come this week. Joining us now for a fair and balanced debate are Republican Congressman Jason Chaffetz and Democratic Congressman and former prosecutor in the U.S. Attorney's Office in Los Angeles, Adam Schiff. Gentlemen, welcome to you both.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Congressman Chaffetz, I'll start with you. Jay Carney, the White House spokesman, has said that this is an election year fishing expedition. It's politically driven by Republicans. Your response?
Nothing is further from the truth. Brian Terry was killed. He's our Border Patrol agent in December of 2010. This should have been disposed of and took care of very early in 2011. Unfortunately, the Department of Justice lied to Congress when they sent us a letter on February 4th. And that's why this continues to go on and why the Department of Justice and the White House need to come clean and abide by a properly issued subpoena put out in October and provide the documents necessary so we can solve this problem and make sure it never ever happens again.
And Congressman Schiff, of course the use of executive privilege has been done by many presidents, dozens of times, Republicans and Democrats alike. But do you think the White House considered how tough this would play out politically in the PR sense? The fact that, people assume that when the White House does this 11th hour executive privilege claim that there's something to hide.
Well, I'm sure they recognized very early on where this investigation was headed. Unfortunately, I think what started out as a bona fide investigation very quickly turned political. And the Justice Department recognized after it gave 9,000 documents that the Attorney General testified 9 times and gave really an unprecedented level of discovery that the committee wasn't going to take yes for an answer, that it was going to push for a contempt vote and go through this political exercise in an election year, which is very disturbing because I think that the Congress's power of contempt ought to be reserved for very stringent circumstances. Otherwise, it becomes merely another partisan tool. And we already have too many partisan tools at our use these days, and something ought to be reserved for very legitimate disputes between the branches of government. And I think here, where the claim of executive privilege is properly laid against internal department communications, all of which, by the way, took place well after Fast and Furious was shut down, the White House really has to stand its ground. And unfortunately, I think what we're going to see at the end of the day is this will be litigated in court, and at the end of the litigation, the Justice Department will turn over the very same documents it's offering to turn over today.
Well, Congressman Chaffetz, why aren't the documents that you've gotten so far good enough to answer those subpoenas?
No, with all due respect to my colleague, they haven't offered to give us the documents. The reason contempt is going forward is because they haven't turned over the documents. So to turn over the documents with all these conditions that we drop everything, do nothing, it's just totally unacceptable. If the documents are there and they shed light on this, then we deserve as a Congress to be able to see that so we can help solve this problem. And if they clear the Attorney General, as he says, then please, sooner rather than later, give them to us. But the problem is they haven't given us the documents. We deserve to see all of the documents, and it depends what percentage of justice do you want. He says 9,000 documents, but the Attorney General just 2.5 weeks ago testified before us in the Judiciary Committee there are 140,000 documents pertaining to Fast and Furious. Why shouldn't we be able to see all of those documents?
Congressman Schiff, I want to ask you, your colleague, the top Democrat on the House Oversight Committee, Elijah Cummings, promised the Terry family some months back that no stone would be left unturned, that he would find answers and everybody would be held accountable regardless of where that investigation led. Are you confident now you could still assure the Terry family they're going to get the answers thereafter?
Yes, I am, because the Attorney General, really the first action he did after shutting down Fast and Furious was ask for an Inspector General investigation, which is ongoing and will produce, I think, the answers that the Terry family wants and has a right to have. I'm less confident, frankly, that the committee, the Congressional Committee, is going to produce anything valuable, because the most important witnesses the committee show no interest in calling, such as the head of ATF out in Arizona, who was the person in a position to know how this got started, what the origins were in the Bush administration, what was done under the Obama administration. But the committee has shown very little interest in actually the facts that are most important to the Terry family. Unfortunately, what the committee is most interested in is having a fight with the Attorney General. My colleague says, well, why don't they just turn over the documents? Well, the fact is they have turned over thousands and thousands of documents. I guess my colleague must take the position that there is never a legitimate claim of executive privilege. But plainly, presidents of both parties have made the claim of executive privilege, sometimes I think more appropriately than others. But where you're talking about internal deliberative communications after the investigation has been shut down, I think the claim is very properly laid. And the reason why the Attorney General has gone even beyond that, and I hope that this can be resolved before the vote next week, is the Attorney General wants to avoid this constitutional conflict and will even provide some of the documents that are covered by the privilege if the other side will meet halfway. But unfortunately, I think the other side really wants the fight more than anything else.
All right, we've got to leave it there. Congressman Schiff, Congressman Chaffetz, we thank you both, and we will be looking forward, as you are too, to see how this plays out and whether this indeed comes to a House floor vote this